Na 11ª Virada Sustentável, mais de 100 organizações participam do movimento Minha Mensagem, em um momento de construção coletiva para o mundo pós-pandemia. Mais de 400 pontos da cidade estarão com as frases da campanha através do modelo híbrido e gratuito experienciado em 2020. De intervenções artísticas a shows e painéis online. Virada Sustentável, entre os dias 2 a 22 de setembro, na capital paulista.
A gente não consegue acelerar o tempo, mas podemos acelerar ainda mais as nossas ações, usando o tempo que nós temos hoje para transformar o futuro. Por isso, a Braskem, alinhada com os Objetivos de Desenvolvimento Sustentável da ONU para 2030, assumiu novos compromissos com as pessoas e com o planeta. Trabalhando em 7 dimensões diferentes, temos muitas metas para os próximos anos. Entre elas, a eliminação de resíduos plásticos, a ampliação do portfólio I'm Green, nosso plástico feito de material renovável e reciclado, a promoção da diversidade, equidade e inclusão e a neutralização das nossas emissões de gás carbônico até 2050 para combatermos as mudanças climáticas. Vamos transformar o mundo em um lugar mais sustentável para todos, deste tempo e dos próximos. Braskem, um futuro mais sustentável hoje.
bom dia a todos que nos acompanham na edição 2021 do Fórum Virada Sustentável. Sejam muito bem-vindos. Eu sou o Fábio Alves e serei o mestre de cerimônias desse nosso encontro hoje. Estaremos juntos até o dia 22 de setembro com uma série de conteúdos e atividades imperdíveis. A todos que nos assistem pelo canal Virada Sustentável no YouTube, não se esqueçam de se inscrever no canal e ativar as notificações de conteúdo. Siga ainda as redes sociais da Virada Sustentável e fique por dentro de todas as atividades que acontecerão ao longo do mês. Você pode nos achar no Instagram e também no Facebook. Basta procurar por @Virada Sustentável. E para dar início à programação do dia de hoje, eu tenho o grande prazer de anunciar nosso primeiro painel, que tem o oferecimento da Braskem, e abordará o tema Mensagens para o Mundo Pós-Pandemia. A pandemia vai empurrar milhões de pessoas para a pobreza e a meta de erradicação da Agenda 2030 dificilmente será alcançada. No Brasil, esse cenário pode ficar ainda pior em função da gestão desastrosa do governo federal na pandemia. Cooperação global e imunização em massa são os únicos caminhos para sairmos da crise instalada com a pandemia. As tecnologias têm um papel decisivo para impulsionarmos a transição para um mundo mais sustentável e resiliente, com destaque para as fontes de energia renováveis em substituição às de origem fóssil. Este painel terá tradução simultânea e pelo YouTube nossa audiência poderá optar por assistir essa transmissão pelo áudio original, ou então pela transmissão com áudio traduzido em um segundo link. E para moderar este painel, tenho a satisfação em apresentar Jorge Soto, diretor de Desenvolvimento Sustentável da Braskem. Jorge Soto é engenheiro químico e também PhD em Desenvolvimento Sustentável. Atua na indústria petroquímica há mais de 30 anos. Líder do Departamento Corporativo de Desenvolvimento Sustentável da Braskem, Jorge Soto apoia os negócios da Braskem em todo o mundo na integração das dimensões ambiental, social e econômica em suas decisões e processos estratégicos. Ele também é professor do curso de mestrado profissional em sustentabilidade da EASP-FGV. No momento, ele também colidera o desenvolvimento de uma nova norma internacional de princípios e estrutura para a implementação da economia circular na ISO. Jorge Soto, seja muito bem-vindo. Agora a palavra é sua.
Obrigado. Bom dia a todos e todas. Vou ser muito breve nessa introdução do professor Sachs, que adiantou que está com a agenda bem comprometida hoje. Para mim é uma honra poder mediar esse painel, focando essa mensagem para o mundo pós-pandemia. Seguramente temos percebido que a pandemia tem sido um agravante concreto para a condição da sociedade como um todo no planeta, mas em alguns lugares mais que outros. E, infelizmente, os números nos mostram que a situação do Brasil é crítica. Mas não, isso vai muito além da própria doença. O número de pessoas com fome, por exemplo, subiu de 10 milhões para 19 milhões desde 2018 aqui no Brasil. Mas também há alguns aspectos mais crônicos. Por exemplo, temos ainda hoje 35 milhões de pessoas sem acesso à água potável, cerca de 100 milhões de pessoas não têm serviço de coleta de esgoto, entre outros problemas. Por outro lado, o Brasil tem algumas características positivas. O Brasil tem uma das matrizes energéticas mais limpas do mundo. Nossa média é 45% renovável, enquanto o mundo é 14% renovável. A produtividade agrícola no Brasil tem crescido a uma taxa anual de 3% desde 1991, enquanto todo mundo tem crescido a metade disso. Isso nos posiciona como um potencial provedor de soluções para uma série de questões associadas ao desenvolvimento sustentável. O acesso à saúde, acabar com a fome, o acesso à água, o saneamento, a energia renovável, a industrialização sustentável estão entre os 17 objetivos do desenvolvimento sustentável da Agenda 2030 da ONU. Qual será o impacto dessa pandemia nessa caminhada? Que mensagens queremos deixar para quem nos ouve? e também para quem não nos ouve neste assunto. Creio que não há pessoa mais apropriada do que o professor Jeffrey Sachs para discutir isso. Nesse momento passarei para o inglês e vocês podem acompanhar no link específico com a tradução. It's my honor to introduce you, Professor Jeffrey Sachs. Professor Sachs is the director of the Center of Sustainable Development at Columbia University at USA. He is the president of the UN Sustainable Development Solution Network and chair of the Lancet COVID-19 Commission. Professor Sachs has been advisor of 3 United Nations Secretaries General and currently serves as SDG advocate under Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Professor Sachs was twice named among the Times Magazine's 100 most influential world leaders and was ranked by The Economist among the top 3 most influential living economists. Professor Sachs, it's my honor to have you here. Our honor to have you here. The floor is yours.
Thank you, George. The honor is for me, and greetings to friends in Brazil and online. I hope everybody is doing well. We're entering a very intense diplomatic period in the coming days, and that's what I would like to draw our attention to. We need to get something done, and Brazil should be playing a large role. It should be playing a large and positive role, and we're counting on that in the future. Politics are tough right now. COVID is tough right now, but we really need Brazil in the forefront of sustainable development globally, because Brazil potentially is a superpower of biodiversity and sustainable development, and a country that has so much to offer for the whole world. Next week, the UN General Assembly opens, and on that occasion, there will be the first World Food System Summit. This is extremely important because the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, called a World Food System Summit because of the global crisis of hunger and unsustainability of agriculture. And of course, Brazil is one of the breadbaskets that feeds the world. And so sustainability of agriculture is essential. What do we mean by sustainable agriculture? First, we mean agriculture that doesn't damage the natural environment. And that means ending the rampant deforestation in the Amazon and the massive forest fires that burn in the Amazon in recent years, often deliberate for land clearing, for making new extensive cattle ranches, and so on. This is not sustainability. We need a global agricultural system that protects biodiversity, that stores carbon, and that produces healthy foods. We know Brazil can do that, but it hasn't been doing that in recent years under this government, because the attention has been to more land grabs, large land clearing, and it has pushed the Amazon really to a tipping point. We know from the scientists of the Amazon region, and I'm very happy to be part of a process called the Science Panel for the Amazon, led by Carlos Nobre and other leading scientists in the region, that so much deforestation has taken place that there could be significant collapse of the forest through drying and other feedback loops that would be a disaster for Brazil and a disaster for the world. So we need first a sustainable food system, and that is top of the agenda when the UN General Assembly meets. Then in October will be the G20, and Brazil, of course, has a major voice in the G20. And we need the G20 countries to commit to protecting Earth from the devastation of unsustainable land use and from the devastation of human-induced climate change. Also in October will be the opening of the COP15, the Convention of the Parties of the Convention on Biological Diversity. This will open in China, in Kunming, in mid-October. Again, Brazil is front and center of this issue because Brazil is home to some of the greatest biodiversity on the planet. Unique, beautiful, amazing, productive, and under threat. And so the purpose of the COP15 is to set strong guideposts to protecting a biodiversity in the years ahead. Then next month after that, November, is the COP26 of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. This is the Paris Climate Agreement. And by the time we get to Paris, which is now just weeks away, we need the G7, the G20 to have confirmed, and then all governments in Glasgow in November to confirm the commitment to keep warming to under 1.5 degrees Celsius, taking note that we are already at 1.2 degrees Celsius warming of Earth, and that to achieve the goal that we set already 6 years ago in Paris, we need all countries to end greenhouse emissions by mid-century. That means ending the dependency on fossil fuel, converting to wind, hydro, and solar, and ending the release of greenhouse gases from land use, from deforestation, or from unsustainable farm practices. It's a huge agenda. We need Brazil to commit strongly to reach net zero by 2050, as all major countries in the world need to make and then follow that commitment in order for the world to have a chance at climate safety. Now, this is just the opening of what will be years and years of new kinds of investment in sustainable development, because our only hope of achieving these goals is to change the way we are spending money. Brazil has to abandon, the United States has to abandon, Saudi Arabia has to abandon the idea of further development through fossil fuels. That's been a big hope in Brazil. It's been a big hope in the United States. It's been a big hope in the Gulf region. It's impossible. We're at the end of that story. But fortunately, Brazil has massive resources in renewable energy, and Brazil needs to now put forward a very clear timeline and path to 100% renewable economy. We're going to be driving electric vehicles in the future. We're going to be using only clean energy sources. We're going to be basically ending or stranding fossil fuels under the ground rather than bringing them to the earth. Now, we're going to need a global cooperative strategy for that. We're going to need a financing strategy. Brazil should receive substantial international resources for protecting the Amazon and other critical ecosystems of Brazil together with the neighboring countries. So we are going to move to a new kind of economy where we are taxing increasingly the greenhouse emissions, and where we are subsidizing the conservation of biodiversity and the storage of carbon and the protection of ecosystem services. After this first wave of diplomacy, the UN Food System Summit, the Convention on Biodiversity, the G20 Summit, and the Climate Conference, all within a few weeks coming up, then I believe we're going to enter an intensive period of negotiations on how to pay for these sustainable investments. And here again, I think Brazil needs to have a major role in this debate over payments. Brazil has long and rightly argued that the countries that have the historical responsibility for emissions need to pay to reflect that historical responsibility. And this will be part of the negotiating scene. I believe that the G20 in the 3 years ahead will play a decisive role to shape a much fairer, more inclusive, and more sustainable society. This year's G20, October 30, 31, is in Rome because Italy has the presidency. Next year's G20 in 2022 will be in Bali, Indonesia. That's good. Indonesia, like Brazil, has the developing country interests in mind. That will be followed in 2023 by the G20 in India, and in 2024 by the G20 in Brazil. So Brazil is on the calendar now, and we're going to have a relay race from Italy to Indonesia to India to Brazil to help reshape the global financial structures so that we are investing in our sustainability and in our future rather than in our self-destruction. The situation is urgent. Time is short. COVID has deeply destabilized the world. The Brazilian government took its eye off the target of sustainable development in the last couple of years to a very sad extent. But Brazil is deeper and more sustained and more sustainable than any one period. And I have no doubt that Brazil's leadership will return to be a critical voice and a critical leader in this challenge. Thank you for letting me share these brief remarks. My schedule is so crowded precisely because it's nonstop diplomacy now. I'm in New York with the G20 opening and world leaders, with the UN General Assembly opening and world leaders coming in. So I can only be with you for a short period of time, but I want to thank you very much for this online wonderful occasion of championing sustainable development. And I think we have time for a question or two.
Thank you very much, Professor Sachs. It's very clear that we have huge challenges on the journey for sustainable development. And it's also clear that Brazil is an important country that would have to play an important role in this movement. But I would like to change a little bit from governments to business side. How do you see the role of business on supporting this sustainable development journey? Is there any specific message that you would like to send to the business people?
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you for your leadership in that area, Jorge. I believe that all businesses, for their own good, need to be aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement, because otherwise they're going to be operating contrary to the direction that world society is heading. So the first thing is businesses need to understand the Sustainable Development Agenda, how it will shape their markets, how it will shape their technologies, how it will shape their license to operate. I, as a shorthand, propose 4 questions that businesses should ask themselves. And these are the 4 questions. First, are the products, the goods and services produced by this company truly sustainable? If the company is engaged in coal, oil, and gas production, the answer is no. If the company is engaged in producing commodities that are unhealthy, the answer is no. So the first question is about the goods and services of the company. Is the product line appropriate? The second is, are the production processes of the company environmentally and socially sustainable? In other words, is the company producing in a way that is emitting large amounts of greenhouse gases? Is the company producing in a way that is threatening biodiversity? Is the company producing in a way that is undermining community rights and standards? So the second question is about the company's own production systems. The third question that I encourage companies to ask is about their global value chains, because companies are both suppliers and purchasers along a global supply chain. And we need to have co-responsibility along the supply chain. Brazil, as an upstream producer of agricultural products, is going to find that other companies in the supply chain, buyers of soybeans from Brazil, buyers of meat products from Brazil, and so on, are going increasingly to be asking, you must ensure us that these soybeans are not coming from deforestation in Para State. These soybeans are coming from sustainable production on sustainable farms. So the value chain is going to play a larger and larger role. And the fourth question I believe companies need to ask themselves is our company a good citizen? You know, corporations are legal persons, and so they have responsibility as citizens, not to cheat, not to defraud, not to commit tax evasion, not to lobby for socially destructive purposes, but to be good citizens defending the common good. And unfortunately, many companies are not like that at all. They're engaged in bribery, they're engaged in fraud, they're engaged in tax evasion. I know the US companies, they are hiding their money. We have massive tax cheating. And so I believe that this is completely contrary to the chance for sustainable development. Companies should really look at this. Brazil's gone through tremendous corruption scandals in the last decade. The United States is corrupt up to its eyes, by the way, so much money in politics, so much billions and billions of dollars of campaign contributions. We need to clean up these systems. Otherwise, we're never going to have sustainable development.
Thank you very much, Professor Sachs. Do you have time for one more question?
Maybe one more quick one.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So we in the Virada Sustentável, that's the movement that we are in this moment, we have a lot of people from this civil society acting, and citizens, and I would say this social engagement people. What's your message for them?
Well, thank you, first of all, for your leadership, which is crucial, for keeping pressure on governments that don't want to do the right thing, that have bad ideas or bad influences or corrupt influences, or are part of lobbies that they shouldn't be part of. Civil society is very bold, very brave, very important. My main message is, let's keep our eye on the global goals that we've agreed to internationally. We have agreed to 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We have agreed to the UN Framework Convention and the Paris Agreement. We have agreed to the Convention on Biological Diversity. Our governments can't say, no, never heard of that stuff. They signed these things, and they are responsible as government in office now for delivering on them. So I believe that civil society should be not only educating the public about how dire our threats are right now, but also educating the public about what are the commitments that the Brazilian government and other governments have made in the Paris Agreement, for example. What needs to be done? How every country needs to have a commitment to net zero by 2050. how Brazil in particular, because of its special structure, needs to make sure that land use is a strong part of that commitment to zero emissions by 2050. Because for Brazil, it's not merely energy and industry, it's land, which is so absolutely crucial. So we have a massive public awareness campaign, public education campaign, holding government accountable, and helping government, which sometimes isn't so competent, to understand what the pathway to success is. And I believe, George, as you know very well, and you're part of it, that all of our universities have a special role to play in this, because there's expertise, there are the students who are deeply engaged, and it's their future. So we need to get all parts of civil society, but from our side, the universities to be playing a dynamic role in defining this path to a sustainable future.
Thank you very much, Professor Sachs. It has been an honor to have your inspiring words. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks to you, and you're an inspiration, and best wishes for this program. And we will continue to push together, especially for Brazil's leadership on these issues, which is so important. Thanks to everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
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 De volta para você, por favor.
Jorge Soto, muito obrigado pela condução do painel e também nosso muito obrigado ao Jeffrey Sachs pela brilhante palestra. Obrigado por ter estado aqui conosco. E à nossa audiência virtual, nosso muitíssimo obrigado por nos acompanhar até agora, estarem conosco até agora. O Fórum Virada Sustentável volta às 14 horas com 3 painéis imperdíveis: Amazônia e desmatamento, proteger sem possuir, a importância da biodiversidade dentro de contexto de agenda ESG, e também tendências do consumo online com impacto positivo. Até mais tarde, nos vemos em breve. Tchau, tchau.